Hi, everyone. This is Christine Thompson with Baird & Warner, lead agent of the CT team at Baird & Warner. And today on my service series video, I've got Ed Graham with me. He's a fabulous attorney that I use for a lot of my clients, probably all of them almost. And I wanted to have him here so I can ask him a few questions to kind of lead into information that I think will be useful for you, whether you're looking to buy, sell, or both. So Ed, welcome. Thank you for joining my show. I really appreciate you taking time out on Friday. I see it's Casual Friday today.
It is Casual Friday. I'm not normally attired this way, Christine.
I know. I'm used to seeing you in your suit with the sharp tie and all dapper. So I love seeing the side of you, like the runner side.
You aim to please.
Yeah. But Ed, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. I know we've got buyers and sellers out there that are always just a little bit curious or nervous about jumping into the real estate market and may wonder, why is it even important to have an attorney? You know, I know other states in the United States, attorneys aren't used in real estate transactions. So I'm going to just ask you the big blanket question of, why do you think it's valuable to have an attorney, whether you're selling or buying a house, and utilizing legal representation when they're going through that transaction process and bringing it to closing?
Christine, if you recall yourself, and certainly in my experience, we've all made certain investments during our lifetime, but rarely do we make an investment that's as meaningful to us, whether as a financial consideration or as a emotional consideration, than to purchase a house. And of course, once you own a house, you might want to sell that house in the future. So you certainly want to have a lawyer be available to you. The transaction can be complicated. It can be simple, but to have an attorney as part of your representation certainly removes those concerns that normally come with either selling or buying a home, and the problems that can arise in the course of those transactions.
Yeah. You know, my mom works in Arizona, believe it or not, still as an attorney, and we share stories. And in Arizona, they don't use attorneys. It's just the agent and the title company doing it. But she has shared that there have been times where things get pretty sticky between the buyer and the seller. You know, certain things come up where she was like, I need an attorney for this. One of the examples that I even had a client come up with was encroachment on their lot. And, what kind of, that's one of the things that comes up with. But, can you, point out a few things on the contract that you feel attorneys add value to helping their buyer or seller?
Well, despite the current common use of a standardized contract, which I personally and professionally endorse, there still are elements that are part of a transaction that are not covered by that contract. When we engage in services on behalf of our clients, we're looking at that contract and making sure that additional provisions are included through the attorney modification period. So by example, that's the very first time when an attorney's usefulness comes to the surface. That's known as the attorney modification period. A second time is with respect to home inspection, where a person's home has been either inspected for them or for a prospective buyer that wants to purchase a home. And those inspections can lead to many issues related to the condition of the home. Having an attorney to work with the inspection service, communicate on behalf of the client after consulting with the client is invaluable to making that transaction go smoothly. Finally, you mentioned the prospects for an encroachment. An encroachment comes about when a person has a fixed object, such as a fence or a sidewalk, or it could be a concrete walk or some other permanent fixture that actually is on the parcel adjoining the home in question. And so those issues arise where the normal buyer or seller are unfamiliar with the legal implications. And candidly, those can result in some very complicated situations that can't be navigated by the average layperson.
Yeah, I can say I had one closing one time where the survey was done last minute, and there it was laid out at closing table, and then they're looking at it and going, oh, there was 1 square inch of a pool patio surrounding. It was an in-ground pool, and they had the concrete surrounding, and there was one little corner of it that was encroaching into the other lot. And we were all sitting at the closing table, and the title person's like, well, we can't take that. And so, you know, is that a situation where I saw it happen? Would you agree that that's where an attorney can come in real handy? Because I saw the 2 attorneys work it out, call the neighbor, and the attorneys were able to draft an addendum, or however you want to title it. So that way it had the proper legal description allowing that encroachment. So that way both parties were all comfortable with it. It was considered agreed to have that encroachment. It wouldn't create future problems. Is that something that you would you have the capacity to do, sitting at a closing and be able to draft something up in agreement with both parties and have the insurance company be okay with it? You know, papers are flying around at closing.
Yeah, our job, depending on who we're representing, is to make sure that transaction follows the course that the client wishes. In most instances, those encroachments will exist. However, they don't lead to a failure of the transaction, but to a creative solution, such as a license, the use of a document that gives a license to use that small portion of the property. I've had occasions where a shared driveway existed, and there had to be certain assurances given in writing, recorded along with the deed, to make sure that the party who I represented had their position protected. So it comes back to this notion that when a person contracts to buy a house, they don't know the physical dimensions of the lot that they're buying. A survey will help show what those actual dimensions are. And then, as you point out, sometimes it can come very late in the transaction and requires some quick and creative thinking in order to try to navigate to a successful solution.
Yeah, I gotta say, you know, that example and other ones that may deal with HOA, homeowners associations, and information coming in late, all these kinds of things I've seen happen at closing time or just days before closing, where it's like something new comes up. And I just thank my lucky stars that I have an attorney like you to be helping with that, because honestly, I don't think any buyer or seller would know how to come up with a solution. Agents aren't licensed legal, they're not licensed to practice legal law and all of that. And I can't imagine anybody wanting to close on a property and have a risk of taking on a lien or an issue with title insurance and all that, and a deal falling apart. So those are great examples, to me at least, that really say why it's helpful to have you on my team helping my clients, so that way they can be sure they're going to close on their house.
You know, it tends to be such an emotional process, as you well know, in dealing with your clients. And to have a calming experience, professional influence does make a difference, and gives many parties the reassurances that the decisions they're making are in their best interest. And in most cases, they lead to a successful completion of a transaction, even if there is something found to be not perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you really hit on one thing that's important. Is it is emotional buying a house. And if you're sitting at the closing table and going, what, I can't buy the house, you know, emotions are going to start roller coastering all over the place. And you've been very helpful with, you know, keeping everyone calm and helping and figure out, this is what we're going to do. It'll be fine. We're going to get this property closed for you so they can walk out relieved and happy. One last question I have for you, as far as, you know, how you are helpful to buyers and sellers, is after the closing, you know, there's deeds and titles and all of this stuff going on. Is there anything after closing that you guys still follow through on for your client to make sure everything is recorded correctly? You know, what needs to be done?
So in respect to our representation of buyers, that typically is found in the delivery of a recorded deed and a title insurance policy. The title insurance policy, like other policies, is supposed to give the buyer the assurances that they own the property, subject to only acceptable encumbrances, such as the mortgage that they might have signed, taxes, covenants, conditions, restrictions of record, as we call them, in other matters that may affect the property. So as an attorney, we await the receipt of this title insurance policy. We review it, and we look at the recorded deed, and then we deliver that to the buyer as the final communication in a typical real estate transaction. It's a little bit different on a sales side, where most of those efforts are devoted prior to the completion of the transaction. So in many respects, the work is done before the closing or at the closing when an attorney represents a seller.
So you do that for the seller, you're making sure they are totally, hands are washed of the property by the time the property closes, so there's nothing coming back to haunt them.
Yes, you know, it would be a mistake to convey that all transactions occur without anything that occurs after the closing. Sometimes there are conditions that are found in the property that may not have been disclosed, or other aspects of the transaction that were not completed as contracted for. And in those instances, though they're rare, an attorney typically might get involved to make sure that the transaction is completed in the fashion that it was contracted for.
Yeah, but you know, when you're representing the buyer, you know, when you're in the attorney review period, you have a lot of things that you're adding to the contract, as you talked about earlier. And all of that is to really look out for your buyer to make sure that they're going to be getting a clean deed, clear title after closing, and everything will be. And then do you also talk to them about how do you want your name on the deed, you know, to make sure it's recorded properly, and making sure they're getting the homestead rights and all of that? You know, are these things that you're helping your buyer with?
Yes, oftentimes when I represent buyers, we are looking at representations and warranties that we want the seller to make that may not be found in the standard contract. Again, I happen to think that the standardized contract is a great tool to be used in real estate transactions, but it does not cover everything. Things like how title should be taken. Should it be taken as a jointly held property with rights of survivorship, tenancy by the entirety? Should it be vested in a trust? Should a person have an estate planning trust? Other considerations would be disclosures of insurance claims, and other representations that are not made in the standard statutory disclosure that all sellers have to make and buyers acknowledge. In addition, we have probably a total of 15 paragraphs of content that I could cover. but I'll leave it at that and just say that it's content that is based upon the real experiences that we've had in representing many buyers over the course of what is now a 31-year career. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, in summary, I would say with that 7.0 contract at the time that we're talking, at least, I guess a way to look at it from what you're saying is all of these paragraphs written in the 7.0 are kind of like beginning discussions of what needs to be elaborated and clarified after both parties sign a contract. And that's where you come in and help out to expand on what's initially kind of mentioned in the contract. Is that how you probably sum it up?
Yes, and what's interesting, just to make a historical point, the 7.0 contract was preceded by a 6.2, a 6.1, a 6.0, a 5.0.
I know.
So you can tell
Growing.
that the iterations of this contract have evolved over a period of time. Still yet, despite this strong standardized product, our job is to make sure that these additional important criterion are dealt with by the seller and their attorney.
Yeah. Well, you've been incredibly helpful, Ed. I appreciate your time on your Friday. And I'm sure you've probably brought up a lot of interesting phrases and terminology that I'm sure everyone listening is like, what is that? And the whole point is that's why you hire an attorney.
That's right. You think you understand the words, and then you have to know how do those concepts or phrases apply in the context of a sale or a purchase.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure to be a resource to you and your clients in the past, and I appreciate the chance to be part of your telecast today.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. I appreciate it. We're going to upload this. It'll be on Zoom or not Zoom. I'm sorry, YouTube. I'm sure hopefully everyone watching is probably seeing it on YouTube or maybe Facebook. And if any of you watching this has sparked questions in your mind, which I hope it did, you can call Ed directly. You've got his number right there, or you can call me. You can text me. You can direct message me on Facebook, on any social media that you find me. We're both available for you. We just want to be helpful to you and make sure that if you are entering into the real estate arena, that you're going to go in there well educated and informed and confident in everything that you're doing. And the most important thing to remember is build a team. Have a really good team with you, helping you with the process. We can't be a jack of all trades. And when you have trustworthy, experienced, loyal people on your team, you'll have a very good experience buying, selling, or both, whatever it is that you're going to be doing. So again, thank you, Ed, for joining us. And we both look forward to hearing from any of you that have been watching. You all have a great day. All right. Thanks, Ed.
You're welcome, Christine. Thanks again.